the Dragon to Harmony. That will set the stage later today for the opening of the hatch to Dragon, and then the crew members will begin the arduous task of removing critical time-sensitive science samples and science investigations from Dragon and installing them in the proper facilities on the International Space Station so that those investigations can get underway in earnest. So that's the plan for the rest of the day today. Everything is on track. Dragon systems are rock solid. A good spacecraft once again today as it approaches the International Space Station, and as we stand by for its departure from the 350-meter mark, the next port of call will be the 250-meter mark, with an arrival expected just about 9 minutes from now. This view is an over-the-shoulder view of a video monitor in the cupola of the International Space Station. You're looking at the same view that Thomas Pesquet and Shane Kimbrough are looking at. They are the robotic operators today. Pesquet and Kimbrough joined in the cupola by Peggy Whitson, the veteran NASA astronaut, who on April 24th will break the mark for the most days in space by an American astronaut, 534 days, set last year by NASA's Jeff Williams. She will be monitoring Dragon systems throughout the course of the final approach for its grapple by Pesquet and Kimbrough. You can see in this view on the monitor in the cupola the thruster firings that Dragon is conducting as it fine-tunes its path from the yaw, conducting the yaw maneuver right now, which again will present the grapple fixture right in the direction of the space station's Canadian-built robotic arm, the Canadarm2, that will set the stage for the final phase of the approach for the grapple of Dragon by Pesquet and Kimbrough at 5 a.m. Central Time, 6 a.m. Eastern Time. We passed out of range of our tracking and data relay satellite system. We'll be reacquiring a downlink television capability in just a few minutes. Once again, the Dragon is moving from the 350-meter mark directly below the International Space Station to the next waypoint, which is 250 meters below the station, having conducted its yaw maneuver to present the grapple fixture in the direction of the Canadarm2, the 55-foot-long robotic arm that will be used by Thomas Pesquet and Shane Kimbrough to reach out and grapple Dragon at 5 a.m. Central Time, 6 a.m. Eastern Time. Once the grapple is completed, the robotics officer here in Mission Control will take control of the Canadarm2 and begin a very methodical process over the course of a couple of hours to maneuver Dragon into the pre-install position right by what is called the Earth-facing common berthing mechanism, basically a berthing port on the Earth-facing side of the Harmony module of the International Space Station. Here in the flight control room, the visiting vehicle officer, Dave Harshman, who's the lead for this SpaceX mission for NASA, is receiving updates and being told that we are right on the timeline for Dragon's approach. It will arrive at the 250-meter mark just about 3.5 minutes from now. That'll be 820 feet directly below the International Space Station. Dragon performing like a champ, rock solid with all of its systems, all of its navigational systems in excellent shape. The re-rendezvous, the racetrack maneuver to break out of its approach yesterday and to reapproach the International Space Station throughout the course of the evening last night and early this morning has been textbook so far. That re-rendezvous capability rehearsed by the flight control teams in Houston and Hawthorne for every SpaceX mission, as well as every other visiting vehicle mission to the International Space Station. The International Space Station and the SpaceX Dragon cargo craft are currently flying 250 miles over the Tasman Sea, just off the east coast of Australia, moving from northwest to southeast. The two craft will pass over the northern portion of New Zealand a short time from now, and then make a swing across the South Pacific. Again, we are just about at the point at which Dragon will be arriving for a short hold at the 250-meter mark. That will be about a 15-minute hold point, at which time Dragon systems and the readiness of the flight control teams here in Houston and Hawthorne, California, will be polled by their respective flight and mission directors to ensure that we are ready to proceed in even further with grapple scheduled of the Dragon at 5 a.m. Central Time, 6 a.m. Eastern Time. We're just about at the 250-meter mark. You can see in this overlay on the monitor setup for Pesquet and Kimbrough in the cupola at the robotic workstation of the International Space Station. That green circle in the middle is essentially the corridor at which for which Dragon will be flying up to provide the crew members on the station who are responsible for the grapple.
Station Houston for Dragon, confirmed 250-meter hold per step 2 in 1.102.
Houston, we confirm we have the good range, primary and secondary, good lights, corridors displayed, and it's looking good from our perspective.
Okay, we copy. Thanks.
Capcom Mike Hopkins here in Mission Control reporting to Thomas Pesquet of the European Space Agency in the cupola that Dragon has arrived at the 250-meter mark and all of its systems are solid so far. Everything looking very good for an on-time capture of the cargo craft at 5 a.m. Central, capture on an hour and 39 minutes from now.
And Houston Station on 2, are you guys ready for Block Bravo?
we're ready. Copy, Block Bravo.
Right, so for Block Bravo, the light is within the corridor on both cameras. Monitor 1, which is camera 3, X1 lower outboard, and monitor 3, which is camera 9, P1 lower outboard. The light is within the corridor on camera 9. There's the expected offset on camera 1. A little bit port and forward of the center. The vehicle size matches the outline. And the light offset, as mentioned, it's in camera 3, excluding camera 9. And the circle is in the corridor center for both camera 3 and camera 9.
Okay, we copy Altamont. Good report.
And again, this view from the workstation in the cupola. You're looking at the same view that Thomas Pesquet, Shane Kimbrough, and Peggy Whitson are enjoying as they have set up shop at their robotic workstation, ready for the final phase of Dragon's approach for capture at 5 a.m. Central, 6 a.m. Eastern Time. Very visible in this view is the strobe light on the Dragon cargo craft that is flashing, providing the crew members with situational awareness on the position of Dragon during the time that it flies in darkness. Among the interesting science investigations that are being carried to the station aboard Dragon, in its trunk includes two instruments. The SAGE-3 instrument, that is an acronym for the Stratospheric Aerosol and Gas Experiment, which is part of one of NASA's longest-running Earth observation programs, providing long-term data to help scientists better understand and care for the Earth's atmosphere. This SAGE instrument will measure stratospheric ozone, aerosols, and other trace gases by locking onto the sun or the moon and scanning a thin profile of the Earth's atmosphere. Also in the trunk, to be transferred to the International Space Station, is the lighting imaging sensor, which is an external payload that will measure the amount, rate, and energy of lightning as it strikes around the world.
And Station Houston on 2 for Dragon. Hawthorne and Houston are ready for Dragon approach inside the keep-out sphere. Your go to command and monitor approach from 250 meters per step 3 in 1.102.
Copy, go for step 3.
The keep-out sphere referenced by Capcom Mike Hopkins is the essentially the ever-narrowing corridor for the final phase of the approach by Dragon to the point at which it will be in the capture window, as it is called, just a few feet away from the Canadarm2 robotic arm, providing an easy reach for Thomas Pesquet and Shane Kimbrough at that point, who will maneuver the robotic arm to grapple and latch on to the grapple fixture on the Dragon that is located inside the guidance, navigation, and control bay door that was opened just about 2.5 hours after Dragon's launch on Sunday from the Kennedy Space Center.
Houston, station on 2, resume, execute has been sent.
Okay, we copy, Shane. Thank you.
And Dragon has resumed its approach inside 350 meters. Correction, inside 250 meters. Dragon now moving inside 250 meters to its next pause point, which will be the 100-meter mark. Moving now about 9 minutes ahead of the timeline. Everything continuing to look good. All of Dragon's systems are solid.
Station on 2, no change to block Bravo.
Copy, no change, Bravo.
So Dragon continuing its move up the radial vector, the R-bar as it is called. That's the imaginary line drawn between the International Space Station and the Earth. Dragon approaching from below, as do all visiting vehicles coming toward the International Space Station. We're currently about 8.5, 9 minutes ahead of the published timeline, so that implies at least that we could be setting up for a slightly earlier grapple, a few minutes ahead of 5 a.m. Central Time, but we'll keep you posted. Again, after Dragon is grappled, the crew will move. The crew will move to a midday meal while robotic ground controllers here in Houston take the wheel, if you will, and begin to maneuver the Dragon towards the Earth-facing port of the Harmony module, and bolt it into place on the nadir port of the Harmony module, to where it will reside for the next 30 days. There's a graphic showing where this graphic, the two Soyuz vehicles, the MSO-2, that's the ride home on April 10th for Shane Kimbrough, Andrei Bodosenko, and Sergei Ryzhikov. The MSO-3, that is berthed to the Rosviet module of the International Space Station, is the vehicle that carried Peggy Whitson, Thomas Pesquet, and Oleg Novitsky to the complex back in November. The plan calls for the crew to begin the work almost immediately after Dragon is berthed, to conduct leak checks, make sure that we have a tight seal at the common berthing mechanism interface between Dragon and Harmony before they outfit the vestibule, the small passageway that will set the stage for the opening of Dragon's hatch later this afternoon, and for the crew to begin removing time-sensitive science investigations to complete the rendezvous for Dragon and the delivery of the 5,500 pounds of science and research, crew supplies, and vehicle hardware. Dragon now just about 200 meters below the International Space Station. Everything continues in great shape. Dragon systems are in excellent condition, and all of the milestones so far have either been met on time or slightly ahead of schedule.
Station Houston on Space to Ground 2 for Dragon. Dragon is inside the 200-meter keep-out sphere. Crew now has authority to issue an abort if no comm with Houston, and light is outside the corridor.
Copy all, Houston.
Mike Hopkins relaying the information at this point of the approach by Dragon to the International Space Station to the crew. Thomas Pesquet of the European Space Agency And Shane Kimbrough, the station commander from NASA, are in the cupola at the robotic workstation. They have the station's robotic arm poised to reach out and grapple the grapple fixture on the body of the Dragon spacecraft once it moves to within a few feet of the International Space Station. The Dragon is moving to the 30-meter point, with its arrival expected about 26 minutes from now. Once it arrives at 30 meters just before the top of the hour, it is scheduled to spend 20 minutes of station keeping, while the teams here in Houston and in Hawthorne, California, at the SpaceX Control Center, evaluate the status of Dragon systems and the readiness of the crew to proceed with the final few minutes of Dragon's approach for grapple. Or so minutes ahead of the published timeline. If that holds, we 52 a.m. Central, but we'll keep you updated on the expected grapple time when we get a bit closer.
Houston Station on 2 for Block Bravo.
Go ahead on 2, Shane.
Upper Flight Delta Monitor 1, Camera 3 is converging as expected, so it's still not quite in the center, but it's getting closer. No change to Monitor 9. Converging as expected, so it's still not quite in the center, but it's getting closer. No change to Monitor 9. Okay, we Monitor 3.
We copy all, Shane, and that's as expected.
All of Dragon's navigational systems are rock solid, and all of the sensors on Dragon are converging as planned to bring Dragon right up the gut of the corridor that you're seeing at the center of the crosshairs on this overlay display that is being monitored in the cupola at the robotic workstation. This is the monitor that Thomas Pesquet and Shane Kimbrough are watching at the moment. The International Space Station is currently moving from southwest to northeast across the southeastern Pacific Ocean, soon to cross the west coast of South America near the Chilean-Bolivian border. The International Space Station and the SpaceX Dragon cargo craft are approaching an orbital sunrise that will take place across the heart of South America as the two craft fly in tandem from southwest to northeast in an orbit inclined 251.6 degrees to either side of the equator at an altitude of 250 miles. SpaceX is currently about 120 or so meters below the International Space Station. Everything proceeding on track, SpaceX making its way in a glacial fashion up the radial vector to a hold point at 30 meters away, with its arrival about 19 minutes from now. And from one of the truss cameras on the International Space Station, a view of Dragon as it approaches an orbital sunrise about to cross the west coast of South America over northern Chile. Dragon systems in excellent shape. You can see very visibly in this view thruster firings as it slowly makes its way step by step up the radial vector from a point that it arrived directly below the station at about 1,000 meters. The vehicle is moving towards a station keeping point just 30 meters below the station. Everything in great shape. We're running a few minutes ahead of the timeline. We'll keep you posted on whether that sticks or not. that have been en route since Dragon was launched from the Kennedy Space Center back on Sunday. The International Space Station and Dragon now flying 250 miles over the Amazon jungle of Brazil, soon to cross the northern coast of South America. The vehicle will fly directly over the European Space Agency's Arianespace launch site for its Ariane 5 vehicle in Kourou, French Guiana. As Dragon closes in for its grapple and capture by the station crew, reports continue to come in from the Russian Mission Control Center outside of Moscow that the unpiloted Russian Progress 66 cargo craft that was launched yesterday from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan is right on course with its two-day rendezvous for its arrival at the International Space Station on Friday morning. Progress's systems are in excellent shape as well. The Progress will deliver 2.9 tons of food, fuel, and supplies to the residents on board the International Space Station on Friday morning. Our coverage of the Progress rendezvous and docking, the automated docking to the Pirs docking compartment on NASA television on Friday morning will begin at 1:45 a.m. Central, 2:45 a.m. Eastern Time, culminating with the Progress docking to the Pirs docking compartment at 2:34 a.m. Central cargo craft, 3:34 a.m. Eastern Time.
Station on 2 for Black Bravo.
Go ahead, Shane.
And the circle is offset slightly forward and starboard on both.
And we copy all, Shane, as expected. Thanks.
A great view of Dragon as it and the International Space Station fly over French Guiana, soon to cross over the North Atlantic Ocean on this track of the Earth, moving from southwest to northeast. And this view now from the end effector camera on the Canadarm2 robotic arm that ultimately will reach out and capture the Dragon and grasp onto its grapple fin. Dragon and the International Space Station now flying 250 miles out over the Atlantic Ocean. This orbit of the Earth will carry the International Space Station across the west coast of France, Thomas Pesquet's native land, a short time from now. And again, this view from the monitor that Pesquet and Kimbrough are monitoring the approach of Dragon from the robotic workstation in the cupola. Slowly but steadily approaching the 30-meter mark. Dragon should be there in about 2.5 minutes. A great view of Dragon from the end effector camera at the end of the station's Canadarm2 robotic arm. Dragon launched atop the Falcon 9 rocket from Launch Pad 39A at the Kennedy Space Center on Sunday morning, and a very good view of Dragon framed against one of the S-band communications antennas on the International Space Station. About 9 minutes after launch, Dragon separated from the second stage of the Falcon 9 rocket, and within minutes after that deployed its solar arrays and began its trek toward the International Space Station. Less than a minute away from arriving at the 30-meter waypoint. Dragon now holding, putting on the brakes at the 30-meter mark. Everything in great shape.
Station Houston on 2 for Dragon. Confirm the 30-meter hold per step 4 in 1.102. You are go to maneuver to high hover.
Copy. We'll perform step 4 and go to maneuver to high hover.
That call from Capcom Mike Hopkins to Shane Kimbrough in the cupola at the robotic workstation, signaling approval for the crew, that being Kimbrough and Thomas Pesquet of the European Space Agency, to maneuver the Canadarm2 to what is called the high hover position, essentially the interim point that will set the stage for the arm to be extended for the grapple of the cargo vehicle.
9.70.
And Houston, copy, Shane.
Here in the flight control room, Flight Director Zeb Scoville is polling his team of flight controllers to get a go for Dragon to move inside 30 meters. His team of In Hawthorne, California, the SpaceX mission director is now polling his team of flight controllers to get a go for Dragon to move inside 30 meters to the capture point. Typically, Dragon would spend about 20 minutes in this hold point at the 30-meter mark before the command would be issued by the flight controllers in Hawthorne for the vehicle to resume its approach to what is called the capture point. We'll stand by and see whether or not that station keeping time can be reduced for the sake of buying back time for the crew, which will be eager to open up the hatch to Dragon once it is installed and bolted into place on the Earth-facing port of the Harmony module later today.
And we see good loads.
Here in the flight control room, Flight Director Zeb Scoville is hearing from his flight controllers as they review the checklist of procedures for the final phase of the approach of Dragon for its capture by the station's robotic arm. Everything in great shape, Dragon systems solid as a rock. As we stand by for the approval by the SpaceX mission director in Hawthorne, California, for Dragon to proceed inside 30 meters to the capture point. We are running ahead of the timeline. We'll see whether or not this translates to an early grapple time and, in turn, to an earlier installation time that would advance our installation coverage on NASA TV. A good view of Dragon as it and the International Space Station fly just off the northwest coast of Spain, about to cross the west coast of France on this orbit of the Earth. You can see in this ground track map here in Mission Control, just off the west coast of South America is the Russian unpiloted Progress 66 cargo craft that was launched on Wednesday morning from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan. Progress in the midst of a two-day rendezvous to reach the International Space Station on Friday morning. All of its systems are in excellent shape as well. No issues reported. Progress aiming for an automated docking to the Pirs docking compartment of the International Space Station's Russian segment tomorrow morning at 2:34 a.m. Central Time, 3:34 a.m. Eastern Time, to deliver 2.9 tons of food, fuel, and supplies for the Expedition 50 crew. If the flight controllers stick by the timeline of the final evaluation of Dragon systems, we should be staying where we're at the 30-meter mark for about another 9 minutes. And the robotics officer here in Mission Control reports that the Canadarm2 is in the high hover position.
Station on 2 for Dragon Step 3.1. SSRMS is in the high hover position.
Copy, high hover.
All of Dragon's systems in good shape. Just standing by for the word from Hawthorne, California, that the cargo vehicle is ready to proceed inside 30 meters. We're expecting this period of station keeping to be completed in about 5 minutes. The International Space Station, its 6 residents in the Dragon cargo craft currently flying 250 miles over the border of Ukraine and Belarus.
Station on 2 for Dragon step 3.3. Crew is ready for Dragon approach to capture point. Okay, Shane, we copy. Crew is ready for Dragon approach to capture point. And hey, just have a quick question for you. During the OBT, you guys had requested on the S1 lower outboard a tighter zoom and adjust on the pan tilt for when you arrived at the capture point. Do you want us to do that while it's en route, or when would you like us to make those adjustments from the ground?
That sounds good, Hopper, to do it en route.
Okay, copy that. We will take care of that en route.
Thank you, Houston.
Final polls now being taken for the approval to Dragon to resume its approach inside 30 meters to the capture point. This re-rendezvous for the SpaceX cargo craft has been textbook in fashion. All of Dragon's systems in outstanding shape, and the crew on board the International Space Station ready to accept the vehicle. This will be the first of 2 consecutive days of arrivals of resupply craft. Tomorrow, the stage turns toward the Russian Progress 66 cargo craft. And Dragon now has resumed its approach inside 30 meters to the capture point.
Station Houston on 2. Dragon has begun approach from 30 meters. Monitor per step 5 and 1.102.
Copy, we're monitoring in step 5.
Dragon running about 9 minutes ahead of the published timeline. That's good news. The sooner it's captured and berthed to the Earth-facing port of the Harmony module, the sooner the crew can work procedures inside the International Space Station in advance of the opening of the hatch of Dragon and the transfer of the most critical and prioritized science investigations on board the resupply craft. Dragon and the International Space Station now crossing the Russian border with Kazakhstan. Border with Kazakhstan, moving from northwest to southeast at an altitude of 250 miles. As we get a bit closer to the time of the capture of the SpaceX resupply vehicle.
Sensation on 2 for Dragon and Block Bravo.
Go ahead, Shane.
Yeah, using the same cameras, monitor 1, camera 3, monitor 3, camera 9. Light is within the corridor on both. Vehicle size looks good on both. The light is in the center of the circle. The circle, however, is offset from the corridor center, almost a vehicle length, forward and starboard.
Okay, Shane, we copy that. The circle offset's a little more than we expected, but within the corridor.
Copy, and just to be clear, it's about a vehicle forward and maybe a quarter of a vehicle starboard. And that's on both.
Copy, vehicle forward, quarter starboard.
We're about 12 minutes away from the point at which Dragon will arrive at the capture point. That's just 11 meters away from the International Space Station. We're about 12 minutes away from the point at which Thomas Pesquet and Shane Kimbrough will then begin the procedures to extend the Canadarm2 to reach out and latch on to the grapple fixture on the Dragon itself. You can see the grapple fixture in clear view just above where the trunk and the spacecraft are mated. After Dragon is captured, the crew then turns over robotic operations to the robo here in Mission Control, the robotics officer, who will send commands over the next several hours to slowly but surely maneuver Dragon to what is called a pre-install position by the Earth-facing common berthing mechanism on the nadir side of the Harmony module of the International Space Station. Dragon will be maneuvered to a ready-to-latch position. There are ready-to-latch sensors in the common berthing mechanism that will sense the positioning of Dragon and its alignment before it pushes in for the initiation of the bolting. There are 16 bolts that will hold Dragon firmly in place for the course of its month-long stay at the Harmony module. "23 meters now separating Dragon and the International Space Station. Who will send Dragon and the International Space Station flying over southwestern China. Everything in great shape. Dragon continues its slow approach, its methodical approach toward the capture point, which will be a distance of 11 meters from the station. Flight controllers reporting that everything is, quote, right down the middle. Dragon with a perfect approach to the capture point should be there in about 5 minutes. We're in the process of handing over between satellites in our tracking and data relay satellite system. Should be reacquiring our downlink television signal from the International Space Station momentarily.
So station on 2 for Block Bravo. Looks like things are sweetening up. You guys can see it on monitor 1, I'm sure.
And that's affirmative, Shane. We see that.
At the robotic workstation in the cupola, Thomas Pesquet and Shane Kimbrough continue to fine-tune their picture of Dragon on the final moments of its approach for capture. Should be at the capture point just about 2.5 minutes from now. Dragon just about 13 meters away. Once Dragon arrives at the capture point, less than 2 minutes from now, there'll be a final poll of the flight control team here in Houston at the Johnson Space Center and by the SpaceX mission director of his flight controllers in Hawthorne, California, before the go is given by Flight Director Zeb Scoville for the crew to proceed on with the robotic arm maneuver for capture. Zeb Scoville. A good view of the grapple fixture, nestled inside the guidance, navigation, and control bay door of SpaceX, which was commanded open about 2.5 hours after its launch from the Kennedy Space Center back on Sunday morning. Johnson Space Center.
Houston Station on 2 for Dragon Step 6. Capture conditions confirmed. Crew ready for Dragon capture. Copy, Shane. Stand by for capture. Standing by. Station, this is Houston. You are go for capture sequence. Perform step 4 in 1.110 Dragon capture. Begin monitoring the back-away cue card. Copy step 4. Begin monitoring the back-away cue card.
And so, Capcom Mike Hopkins here in Mission Control, providing the approval for Thomas Pesquet and Shane Kimbrough to proceed on with the movement of the station's Canadarm2 robotic arm toward the grapple fixture to latch on to Dragon and complete its journey that began with its launch from Launch Pad 39A at the Kennedy Space Center back on Sunday. Again, SpaceX Dragon's resupply vehicle carrying 5,500 pounds of science and research, crew supplies, and vehicle hardware. It will be berthed a few hours from now and bolted into place on the Earth-facing port of the Harmony module of the International Space Station, thus allowing the crew on board to begin the procedures for leak checks, vestibule outfitting, and eventually the opening of the hatch to Dragon later today of the International Space Station, thus allowing the crew on board to begin the procedures for leak checks, vestibule outfitting, and eventually the opening of the hatch to Dragon later today and the start of the removal of as the Canadarm2 robotic arm moves in for the grapple of the Dragon cargo craft. The International Space Station will be placed in what is known as free drift, with its thrusters temporarily disabled to prevent any inadvertent thruster firings that would perturbate the operation of the arm and providing a firm handshake with the grapple fixture on the Dragon.
Houston Station on 2 for Dragon, beginning approach. Houston copies.
The robotics officer here in Mission Control reports that the Canadarm2 is now in motion. You can see it very clearly in the monitor that Thomas Pesquet and Shane Kimbrough are using in the cupola at the robotic workstation. This view now from the end effector on the Canadarm2. Two and a half meters to go, the station now in free drift. One meter to go. Capture confirmed. Dragon in the grasp of the Canadarm2 robotic arm. Capture confirmed at 4:44 a.m. Central Time, 5:44 a.m. Eastern Time, as Dragon and the International Space Station flew 250 miles off the northwest coast of Australia. Happy flight controllers at the SpaceX Mission Control Center in Hawthorne, California.
Dragon, looks like we got a great capture. Come out, did an awesome job flying it in.
Congratulations tomorrow, Shane. Expedition 50. Great job with Dragon capture, and sorry about the delays. Now the real work starts.
As soon as that captured Dragon has now officially arrived to ISS, we're very happy indeed to have it on board, and very much looking forward to putting to a good use the two and a half tons of science and cargo it carries. I would like to congratulate all the teams who took part in the mission in Hawthorne, California, Houston, Texas, and all over the world. Such a strong partnership between agencies and commercial entities, together with international partners, is without a doubt the future of space exploration. And we're paving the way every day on the ISS. So congratulations, Dragon, on a successful journey from Earth, and welcome on board.
Thanks, Tom. I appreciate those words. Well done again, and looking forward to the next few weeks of just a lot of science and extra work on board. It's fantastic.
Are you ready for safing?
And that's affirmative. We're ready for the safing.
Copy and work.
An exchange of congratulations between Capcom Mike Hopkins here in Mission Control, telling the crew on board the station that we are sorry about the delays, referencing the aborted rendezvous yesterday. But today it was smooth as glass for Dragon all the way back around that racetrack trajectory, putting itself in a perfect position for capture, the grapple of Dragon by Thomas Pesquet of the European Space Agency, who congratulated the flight control teams around the world for the successful arrival of Dragon at the International Space Station. Capture once again occurred at 4:44 a.m. Central Time, 5:44 a.m. Eastern Time, about 16 minutes ahead of schedule. After a chance for the crew to catch its breath, the robotics officer here in Mission Control now takes charge of the robotic arm to maneuver Dragon towards the Earth-facing port of the Harmony module of the International Space Station, to where it will be placed in the pre-install position and then gently maneuvered into a ready-to-latch position for the bolting, the operation by the mechanical systems officer here in Mission Control of the execution of the bolting or latching of all of the bolts, the 16 bolts in the common berthing mechanism on the nadir side of the Harmony module that will place Dragon in a firm hold and a hard mate to the station for the next month. Inside, Shane Kimbrough and Peggy Whitson will take control over the outfitting of the vestibule after they conduct leak checks between the interface between Harmony and Dragon. They then will outfit the vestibule, the small passageway between that area of the two vehicles before they open the hatch to Dragon later today and begin to transfer the highest priority science investigations that have been en route since the launch of Dragon from the Kennedy Space Center on Sunday. One meter to go. This is Mission Control Houston, a view inside the International Space Station Flight Control Room here at the Johnson Space Center in Houston. Just to recap, the SpaceX Dragon cargo craft, after waving off a rendezvous attempt yesterday due to an incorrect navigational data bit that was uplinked to its computers that called off the approach yesterday for its capture and sent it on a racetrack trajectory for a 24-hour re-rendezvous. SpaceX Dragon was solid as a rock today. Everything was perfect with all of its systems as it made its methodical approach back toward the International Space Station, arriving at a point directly below the station at about 1,000 meters, then moving its way to various station-keeping points up the radial vector, the R-bar as it is called, the imaginary line drawn between the International Space Station and the Earth. Finally, it arrived at what is called the capture point, just a few meters away from the International Space Station. Inside the station's cupola at the robotic workstation, European Space Agency astronaut Thomas Pesquet and Shane Kimbrough, the NASA commander of the International Space Station, extended the station's robotic arm and grappled the grapple fixture on Dragon at 4:44 a.m. Central Time, 5:44 a.m. Eastern Time, as the International Space Station and Dragon flew 250 statute miles over northwest Australia. The crew, Kimbrough, Pesquet, Peggy Whitson, they're now back inside the Destiny laboratory of the International Space Station as they begin to prepare for leak checks that will begin after Dragon is installed and bolted into place on the Earth-facing port of the Harmony module, that coming up over the course of the next few hours. The goal is for the crew to open the hatch to Dragon before it ends its workday today and begin the process of removing the most important and highly prioritized science investigations and other time-critical science hardware from Dragon, and get the process underway of transferring some 5,500 pounds of science and research, crew supplies, and vehicle hardware that Dragon carried up to the station following its launch on Sunday morning from the Kennedy Space Center. So Dragon performed like a champ today. Everything was in great shape all the way around, and now the robotics officer here in Mission Control will begin the process of maneuvering Dragon, which is in the firm grasp of the Canadarm2 robotic arm, over to the installation position on the Earth-facing side of the Harmony module, where Dragon will be bolted into place to reside for the next month. While all of this activity was going on, the unpiloted Russian Progress 66 cargo craft, which launched yesterday from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan, is making its methodical approach to the International Space Station on its own right, all of its systems in excellent shape. Progress is carrying 2.9 tons of food, fuel, and supplies for the crew members on board the station in of itself, and will arrive at the station for an automated docking to the Pirs docking compartment of the International Space Station on the Earth-facing side of the Russian segment of the complex tomorrow morning. Just a programming note or two. We're going to take a break here in a few minutes at the top of the hour, and we will resume our Dragon coverage of its installation and bolting into place at the International Space Station at 7 a.m. Central Time, 8 a.m. Eastern Time. Again, our installation or berthing coverage resumes for Dragon.
Hey, Shane, just want to let you know, you do have a go for the 1400 activity, your CCP reroute.
Okay, great. I'll put that in work.
Again, our installation coverage of Dragon to be bolted into place on the Earth-facing port of the Harmony module begins 2 hours from now at 7 a.m. Central Time, 8 a.m. Eastern Time on NASA television. And tomorrow, the second part of the cargo supply doubleheader will be broadcast on NASA television as the Russian Progress resupply vehicle arrives for its automated docking to the complex. We'll be back on the air on Friday morning at 1:45 a.m. Central, 2:45 a.m. Eastern Time to follow the final phase of Progress's docking to the station, with the docking itself set to occur at 2:34 a.m. Central Time, 3:34 a.m. Eastern Time. So with that, we'll bring this broadcast to a close. Dragon in the grasp of the station's robotic arm following a flawless rendezvous, a re-rendezvous, and its capture as the station and Dragon passed over northwest Australia, with capture confirmed at 4:44 a.m. Central Time, 5:44 a.m. Eastern Time. So we'll pause now in our coverage for a couple of hours. We'll be back on the air with you at 7 a.m. Central, 8 a.m. Eastern Time for our Dragon installation coverage. In the meantime, have a good morning. This